Please don't.
Hey, well met, travelers. Thanks for stopping by my channel. If you're new here, welcome. If you're not new here, welcome back. Today, I'm going to take something of a content pivot and talk about one of my favorite movie and book franchises of all time, Jurassic Park / Jurassic World. I'm not Jurassic World. I guess fans, we all just call it the Jurassic fandom for short. Although my geology education objects to that, but okay, whatever. Point being, the trailer for Jurassic World Rebirth dropped last week, and it showed us this thing right here, which fans, some fans anyway, have started calling the D-Rex. Others have said, it's a kaiju. Why is there a kaiju in my dinosaur movie? So we're going to talk about this because Jurassic is one of my all-time, like one of my top 5 favorite franchises of all time. I'm obsessed with it. I've read the books multiple times. I've watched the movies multiple times. I've watched the animated series multiple times. And I love all of them. Yes, even Jurassic World Dominion. All of the Jurassic installments have something in them that I love. I don't love them all equally, but they all have something that I love. And I think the D-Rex here might be shaping up to be one of those things. Now, at first, I was like everybody else. I saw this thing and was like, what is this doing in my Jurassic Park movie? This looks like some Cloverfield stuff here. This is like Godzilla x Kong Monsterverse stuff, right? Why is this in my Jurassic movie? And I wasn't alone in thinking that, right? I've seen a lot of fan reaction online and in everyday conversation of people like going, what is this? I don't get it. What are they doing? Are they turning this into monster movies now? So I thought about this a little bit, and I'm coming around to the conclusion that the D-Rex here might actually have much stronger grounding in the lore and the themes of Jurassic than we would think at first glance. Now, I don't know why fans have dubbed this creature the D-Rex. I'm assuming it's a reference to the Doomsday Rex, the polycephalic, which is to say the two-headed T-Rex that was going to appear in the Lost World animated series that never got off the ground. Maybe it means deformed Rex, or perhaps divisive Rex. I don't know where the D-Rex term came from. That's not what the creature is called in the movie, as far as I know. But be that as it may, I think there's room to explain everything we're seeing about this creature based only on lore and themes that already exist in the franchise. So let's start with the big picture. The author of Jurassic Park, Michael Crichton, never met a new technology that did not scare the shit out of him. And that fear produced some really awesome stories. And the technology in Jurassic Park that really frightened Michael Crichton was genetic engineering. He was deeply disturbed about genetic engineering's implications for the human race going forward, and particularly about cloning. So he used dinosaurs as a proxy to explore a nightmare scenario involving the cloning of animals. And one of the things about cloning animals that's sort of touched on in the book, but isn't explored in a great deal of depth, is the fact that it usually produces what we would call monsters, especially if we're talking about the time period in which the book was written and the original story took place, which would be like the early 90s. So the science of genetic engineering and cloning was, if you will pardon the phrase, in its infancy back then. And it produced unviable creatures far more than it does now. And most of these mutated creatures lived a very short and sad existence. Most of them would die within hours or days of coming out of gestation, and they would have deformities that made every moment of their existence agony. And we could reasonably expect something like this to be happening at the beginning of John Hammond and InGen and Dr. Henry Wu, starting the World / Jurassic Park project. There is no way they produced perfect dinosaurs the first time, right? There's just no way. And there is a conversation in the book between Dr. Wu and Ian Malcolm in which Dr. Wu mentions that they have gone through a couple of generations of clones, that they've had some, I guess, false positives. They've had some unviable samples that turned into they didn't know what. I think Dr. Wu mentions that they originally thought they had 20 species, but it turns out they only had 15. And the reason they thought they had 20 is because their original efforts of extracting dino DNA from mosquitoes produced some specimens who were not kosher, right? Now, like I said, most such creatures, when they come out of the gestation, most such clones die within hours or days of being born. But if InGen and Dr. Wu and Hammond were doing these clonings at a great enough volume, we would expect one or two of these specimens to actually live a full lifespan, if not longer. And InGen scientists would probably work to keep it alive so they could study it and understand what was working and what was not working with their other embryos. So, big picture wise, there's precedent for including some kind of mutated dinosaur animal thing in the Jurassic Park, the Jurassic franchise without really retconning anything. You just have to pay attention to detail and pay attention to some of the bigger themes. And that brings us to the details of this creature's morphology. A lot of people look at this and they see a six-limbed kaiju creature and they kind of like blow their top. And Gareth Edwards, the director, did say that this design was influenced by other movies like Alien and I think Alien and the T-Rex are the two I remember. I forget what the other... the Rancor from Star Wars. So those things did influence this. But if you look closely at some of the broader body plan things going on here, I think it calls to mind some details from the Jurassic lore. After I thought about, I was looking at this creature for the first time, and like everybody else, I played the trailer on slow motion and did zoom ins and all that other stuff to look closely at this thing. And to my eye, this looks like it is mostly a T-Rex clone that has too much frog DNA being expressed in it, maybe in its embryonic form. David Koepp, the screenwriter for Jurassic World Rebirth, who also wrote the first Jurassic World movie, has said in interviews that this thing is supposed to represent the first attempt at creating a T-Rex. So if you look at this thing's body plan and compare it to pictures of frogs, you'll see some pretty big similarities here, like the stooped posture, the forelimbs being longer and higher than the rear limbs, the bulbous, the little bulbous head, the short neck, all of that. That looks like a frog to me, right? A giant frog. And just consider the horrors if this thing has frog powers, like it can leap like a frog, or maybe it has a frog tongue that it can lash out and snatch prey with from a distance. Nightmare fuel, bro. Honestly, nightmare fuel. So there's that. There's precedent for including that. There's precedent for having a giant frog T-Rex hybrid in Jurassic, because if we look at this honestly, all of the dinosaurs in Jurassic, at least in the first movie and in the books, all of them are frog dinosaur hybrids. That's what enabled them to change sex and start breeding despite the humans' attempts to control their population. Life finds a way and all that. So that makes sense to me. We have to also consider the source of the 6 limbs. There's 2 possible explanations for this that, again, would be completely consistent with pre-existing Jurassic lore. The one I think is most likely is mosquito DNA. Remember, that the original blood samples from which the original dino DNA was taken was drawn from Cretaceous and Jurassic era mosquitoes who had been fossilized in amber. And early on in the infancy of genetic engineering, it was probably a lot more likely that some mosquito DNA would end up contaminating the samples they drew and probably end up spliced into the genome that they built using frog DNA. So if a sample got through with a significant enough or the right parts of the mosquito genome that got expressed during embryonic development, we can end up with something that looks like this, with 6 limbs instead of the usual tetrapod body plan of 4 limbs. That's one explanation. The other one is that apparently frogs have mutations that produce extra limbs. I did not know this until a friendly Reddit user named RazorRex, thank you RazorRex, posted my blue sky tweet. I guess it's a skeet, is that what we call them? Summarizing the points I'm making right now. And in the discussion on that Reddit thread, which I'll link below, some people pointed out that there are frog mutations that produce extra rear limbs. There's even a weird, really, really creepy frog deformity mutation that causes the eyeballs to grow inside the mouth. Ugh.
What the fuck?
But anyway, so it's apparently just with normal frogs, it is possible to produce a specimen that has extra rear limbs. So perhaps that's what happened to this poor creature here, the D-Rex, as well. So I think this thing fits. To me, it makes sense. I think it would be a great addition to the lore. And I also see an opportunity here for a sympathetic monster, right? It's not a stretch to say that Jurassic Park is a Frankenstein story. And it would be reasonable to think that any creature produced through this process, like a mutated creature like the D-Rex here, would not only be in constant physical agony, but would also be in constant emotional and psychological agony, much like Frankenstein's creature was. Because much like Frankenstein's creature, the D-Rex would have social instincts. It's an established part of the Jurassic universe that T-Rexes and other theropods are social animals. So this wonky mutated T-Rex here would have social instincts, and it would want to form bonds and relationships with others of its kind, but others of its kind would find it monstrous and repulsive and constantly reject it and run away from it in fear, and perhaps even attack it out of fear. So it would be lonely and isolated, probably have trouble breathing because of its skull morphology, which looks to me like frontonasal dysplasia. Look that up. I'll put the wiki description up here, but I'm not going to show you pictures of it because it can be very upsetting to see people and animals who have that condition. But the point being that this creature is probably in constant agony. It never asked to be made. It probably at some level wants to die, and yet it must live. So I see a great opportunity here to inject some nuance into our understanding of monstrosity by making us pity this thing a little bit. We'll be scared of it because it's giant and it wants to eat us and it's capable of swallowing us whole. But at some level, we might be made to feel sorry for this creature too. And that, I think, would bring a lot of emotional resonance and depth to a story that is basically just about monsters eating people while billionaires pick their pockets. The people's pockets, that is, not the monsters' pockets. Although if monsters had pockets, the billionaires would pick those too. Anyway, point being, I have evolved my understanding of what the D-Rex is and how it fits into the Jurassic lore here, and I'm interested to hear what you have to say. So let me know down in the comments below. And if you like this content, make sure you like and subscribe and do all the other bells and whistles that the great God algorithm demands of us. And until next time, remember that what's best in life is to crush your enemies, see them driven before you, and engage in discourse with the women. I'll see you next time.